Welcome to BizJet TV. My name is Fabrizio Poli. Today we're going to be talking about using freelance pilots. Is it a good idea or not? So we'll go into that. We'll look at it from the perspective of the pilot and also from the perspective of the aircraft owner. So we'll be exploring this subject for you today. If you haven't subscribed to BizJet TV, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel all about private aviation. Give us a thumbs up and comment below. But let's get into today's episode all about freelance pilots. Off we go. So, owner's perspective and pilot's perspective. Let's start with the owner's perspective. So, is it a good idea as an aircraft owner to hire some contract pilots or freelance pilots as they're called? Now, first of all, as an owner, if you're buying a new aircraft, you usually are going to get 2 type ratings for the pilots as part of the deal. Sometimes you get 3, 4, or even I've heard of 5 type ratings with the deal, depending if you're talking to Dassault, you're doing a deal with Cessna or Gulfstream or whoever it may be, and every deal is different. So when you are buying a brand new aircraft, try and negotiate and get as many pilot type ratings as possible, and then you can then choose your pilots and send them to qualify on the particular aircraft, and they'll be very grateful for getting a so-called free type rating. Some people like to bond their pilots for the type rating, because these ratings can be expensive. We're talking anywhere from $25,000 all the way up to about $120,000. Bigger the airplane, usually more expensive the rating. My recommendation is, if you are an owner, is to hire your own pilots, because if you hire your own pilots, you'll get loyal pilots. They'll probably stay with you a lot longer. That's if you pay them well and you give them enough time off, and they've got that work-life balance, which is really, really important for everybody. And it helps your pilots perform well and do their job well. So there are owners out there that, follow that advice, and they hire their own people, and they hire enough pilots to cover the type of operation. 2 is the minimum, unless, you've got a single pilot aeroplane. And that's what most people do. But using a freelance guy, even if you have, let's say, your own Global Express, and you hire 2 pilots, 2 captains, they fly together, and then you have maybe 1 or 2 freelance guys that you can use from time to time to fill in. And usually you find those freelance pilots through your pilots that have a buddy that's rated on the aeroplane that does freelance, and they know they can call on John or Larry from time to time to come and do some flying. Now, how much will the freelance pilots cost you? I mean, anywhere between $1,000 to $2,500 a day, plus per diems. Per diems is usually about $100 to $150 a day on top of that, and that pays for food and things like that. And of course, you've got to pay for their hotel. And if they have to position to the aircraft, you have to pay for them to be positioned to the aircraft and then reposition home at the end of the gig. So that's how much, as an owner, it will cost you to hire a pilot on a day-by-day basis. Now, if you are an owner pilot where you operate your own, King Air or Pilatus PC-24 or Honda Jet or Phenom 100 or 300, which are all single pilot aircraft, you do have pilot owners that like to fly around on their own. They do their training, every 6 months, flight safety or CAE. It is my recommendation to hire a freelance pilot from time to time, maybe once a month, to fly with you for 3 or 4 days, just to sort of give you some training, check and see how you're doing, keep you safe. This is something that is very useful. It's something that I've done in the past. People call me up, they know, I've got airline experience, I've got private jet experience, and they say, look, I'd like to hire you for 3 days to come and fly with me and, give me some tips and help me out and train me a bit. And that's something that, is useful. And then in that case, using a freelance pilot is a very, very good solution. Now, as far as, when can you hire a freelance pilot? There is a situation where it's very difficult to do so. If you have your own aircraft and you decided to put your aircraft on what's called a Part 135 certificate, that's what it's called in America, or an air operator certificate would be in Europe or other parts of the world, which means that your airplane is in a charter company, and when you're not using it, you can actually charter your airplane out to third party. Now, if that's the case, the pilots that fly the airplane have to be trained not only on the particular aircraft, they also have to be trained according to that charter company's standard operating procedures. So, and that can take a couple of months to do that training, and it may cost some money. So in that case, using freelance pilots is going to be very difficult because these pilots would have to gone through that training. And it's not like you can call Larry up tomorrow morning and say, can you come and fly? Because if he hasn't done that training and he's not certified by that company to fly that company airplane with a company uniform according to the SOPs and all that great stuff, it's not possible. But if you are operating your aircraft privately, or Part 91 as it's called in America, then using freelance pilots is a lot easier. So that's kind of from the owner's perspective. So just to recap, if you are an owner, it's always best to have your own pilots. But, it does give you a bit of flexibility to be able to use the freelance guys. And I'll add another thing. There are agencies out there right now. There are apps which will help you to find a contract pilot or freelance pilot for a few days. And pilots also can, load their information into these apps with all their licenses and ratings and training and photographs and all that kind of good stuff in there. And so, there's some really good agencies out there these days that do exactly that. They offer contract pilots for, a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, whatnot. And that's what happens for the owner. Now, let's look at the pilot's perspective. Now, there are pilots out there that do prefer having a stable job. So they would never go down the freelance route. So they want an owner that, hires them, pays for their type rating on the Challenger 300. They get the rating, they get their, $10,000, $15,000 a month. They get their days off, and they're happy to live that way. But there are other pilots that say, this whole idea of being a contract pilot or, a freelance pilot is actually really cool because, number one, I get to choose what airplane to fly. And there's some pilots that are rated on 2 different airplanes. And so they say, I fancy the Gulfstream G550, so off they go. They pay $60,000 to get their type rating, and they offer themselves on the freelance market. And then the beauty of freelance is, people can call you up and say, okay, I've got a 10-day gig. Okay, $2,500 a day, off I go. I do my 10 days, get my 25 grand, and then I decide I'm going to take 3 weeks off because I'm going to go and do some stuff with my family. Or this does work really well in the case where a pilot also has other interests. So you may have a business, or you may have a number of businesses, a portfolio of properties, you may be doing up a house or whatever. And so being a freelance pilot gives you the flexibility to decide when you want to work. And so it's a great solution for, that type of pilot that has other interests besides flying to be able to do that. It's an opportunity out there, but, the downside is that, when there's a sort of glitch in the economy and planes are starting not to fly, or you get a lot of people start selling their jets, then, the market starts to dry up for the freelance pilot. Now, freelance pilots, if you are a pilot and you're thinking, well, I'm going to go out there now and invest in a type rating, what type rating should I go and invest in? And of course, smaller the plane, cheaper the type rating, bigger the plane, usually more expensive the type rating. But what I would say is this: if you're gonna, if you're a freelance pilot and you're flying citation CJ1s, that's a good rating because you're qualified on the CJ1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's basically 4 different aeroplanes. There's quite a few of them out there. It's a good rating to have. But what you'll find is when you get to freelance on these aeroplanes, first of all, you won't get paid as much as a Global Express pilot, number one. Number two, you'll get people call you up and, oh, I need you tomorrow. So it's 1 day's flying. You make $1,000, you fly 1 day, you maybe have to drive an hour to the airplane, off you go flying, come back, you get your money. And then a couple of days later, somebody else calls you up for a 2-day gig. And so you are commuting a lot between one gig and the other because they're all short trips because they're small jets. And the small jets usually go out for an hour and a half, sit for the whole day, and then fly back for another hour and a half. If you are freelancing on the larger jets, when people call you for a gig, it's usually you're away for 3-4 days, a week, 10 days, 2 weeks. You get these chunks of flying. And, and at $2,000 or $2,500 a day, it's nice to get a 10-day chunk, off you go, $25,000 in. Or what may happen is they turn around and say, well, I need you for a month. But, I don't want to pay you $2,000 a day for a month. So instead of paying you $60,000, let's do the deal at $45,000. Okay, deal done. I'm going to be working for 30 days. I know I'm away from my family, but, I'm coming home with $45,000 in my pocket. And I can afford to take 2 or 3 weeks off if I want. So it gives the pilot that flexibility. Of course, there's the risk. You have to pay for your training every 6 months, and that can be expensive. You could be paying $25,000 to $30,000 every 6 months for your recurrent. So you have to make sure that you're going to be making enough money to be able to cover that. But there are advantages doing that. And as a pilot, you want to network, you want to let people know that you're out there, you want to sign up with the various agencies so that you're registered with maybe 2 or 3 different agencies so you can get some agency work and then some work through word of mouth and sort of build your network. But it's a great solution to be able to sort of be a professional pilot and also have other business interests and really manage your own time. I mean, there are some jobs in the private jet industry where you're basically on call every single day of the year. And that can be very difficult for your private life. And this is where, you know, the whole gig economy, as they call it for pilots, can come in really useful for a certain type of pilot. But, you know, it depends what type of mindset you have. So that's really all my take on should you use freelance pilots or contract pilots. So I hope I've, you know, covered the questions you may have had. And if you have any more questions about this subject or anything else, just ping a question below. If you haven't subscribed to BizJet TV, subscribe to BizJet TV and check out this video on pilot training, which is interesting. And that's all for Fabrizio Poli on BizJet TV, and I'll see you on the next one.